Great, well, let's get underway. Not just scenic, essential. Those are the words from the description for this session and our natural environment. That's clearly drawn you to this session. So here we are, securing the environment for business in the north of England. I am sure that through the next hour, we're going to see the positive relationship that businesses, large and small, can have with land, water, and nature. And a positive relationship that is core in our response to the rapidly changing climate. So on this topic, I wonder what would make a good panel. Well, in my view, you couldn't get better than what we've got here today. So delighted to welcome to the stage Phoebe Tucker, who's a Senior Nature Associate at the Green Finance Institute, Hannah Eskell, who's a Senior Nature Advisor at Aviva, Mark Cunliffe-Lister, who's owner of the Swinton Estate in North Yorkshire, and Will Lockhart, who is the Deputy Director, Nature Markets and Investment at DEFRA, our Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So welcome to our panel. Really delighted that this hand-picked panel is able to help us on this question today. Of course, I've got questions for our panel to help us all. We've got some questions for you that will pop up, I hope, on your phones. We'll give you the code to get there in due course. And also, I'm really looking forward to the questions that will come from all of you who aren't on the stage right now. There will be time for that towards the end. So, and I should just say, by way of introduction, I'm Bruce Howard, and I run the Ecosystems Knowledge Network, working with Green Finance Institute and others, helping businesses and many other types of organizations to find this positive relationship that they can have with the natural environment around them. So, to get us going and to get our panel speaking, I'm going to ask our panel now to tell us what is your organization's role in ensuring that we have an environment in which business can thrive in this part of England. Why don't we go down the sweep, starting with Phoebe?
Thank you, Bruce. So great to be here. Thank you for having me on this panel. I agree it's a great group to discuss this topic with. So to your question on our role, the GFI, we're an independent company. We were set up in 2019 to essentially act as a go-between for the public and private sector. So it's helpful to clarify that we don't actually have a balance sheet, we don't have any shareholders, and we don't have a consulting service that we give individuals. What we actually do is we work with governments and market stakeholders, including businesses, in aggregate to tackle key issues for channeling private capital into sustainable outcomes, including nature, which is the team I sit in. So the way we do this, we tend to focus on two strands of work. Number one is identifying and helping to scale and replicate key models that can really work on that kind of transactional flow of private capital. So things like nature markets, nature-based carbon, biodiversity net gain, which I focus on, but we're also increasingly looking at supply chain models and business resilient investment. Those are things that we're actively exploring, and so we work with lots of different partners to make that happen. And then the second strand of our work really is laying the foundations and looking at the underlying architecture. So if we're going to shift to an economy that values and invests in nature, what are the components of that? Things like frameworks, standards, cross-cutting regulation and policy changes that need to happen for businesses to really act on their nature-related risks and impacts. And so we, for example, host the UK consultation group on the TNFD, and we're developing sectoral pathways for nature called Nature Positive Transition Pathways, which allow businesses to really understand what they need to do. And so as an independent company, we can act as that go-between, and we can identify and act on those opportunities. My mic is dead. We basically work to jump on those opportunities that the public and private sector can't work on in isolation. So that's our role.
Great. Hannah.
Brilliant. And thanks, Bruce, for having me. So I'm Hannah Oskell. I work in the Group Nature team at Aviva. When we talk about the environment for business in the north, we're really talking about the foundations that we all depend on, in particular businesses. So we really see nature as natural infrastructure, so regulating water, land stability, soil health and well-being for the communities and customers and our workforce. So it really is central to us as a business. At Aviva, the way we work on this is at multiple levels. So at a high level, centrally, we've done a dependency impact risk and opportunity assessment, which has helped us understand the material hotspots of nature risk and opportunity throughout the business, and working to integrate that into our strategy. And then more directly, we're working with partners, including in this region, on long-term partnerships that help restore the nature and environments that are around us and around our businesses and clients. A couple of those are the Woodland Trusts. We've got two really key sites here in the north, Snaysholme in the Yorkshire Dales and Smith Hills in Lancashire, which I had the pleasure of going to a couple of weeks ago. And with the Wildlife Trust, we've got restoration of the Skiddaw Forest. And these are helping to reduce wildfire risk, flood risk, and also opportunities of BNG, as you said. So bringing these approaches and organisations together is really critical for us. And in terms of what we're doing, we were really proud to support the Best 12 Business and Finance Day last month in Manchester. Really see the power of bringing together these different stakeholders, so policy, NGOs, academia, business, to create and scale solutions. And I think we really need all these groups on board to create longevity in these solutions, which is great because we've got all these different organisations on the discussion today. Thank you.
Great. So Aviva's definitely involved. And over to Mark.
Hi, Mark Cunnifister, Swinton Estate. We have an estate about an hour north of here in the Yorkshire Dales. We're sort of involved, I suppose, in two ways. One, we have a leisure business there. We run Swinton Park Limited, 40-bedroom hotel and spa. And then we also have the Swinton Estate, the rural side. And so through either way, the leisure side, we've gone through a company called Investors Environment and worked out our carbon footprint and understand what Scope 1, Scope 2, and how we can reduce that and work with them to do that. And then on the rural side, we've worked with Ecosystems Knowledge and through the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, or NERF, hopefully we'll get to call it, and understanding how we can bring nature markets to companies that have gone through the exercise we've done on the leisure side. So it's really through that we've then set up a corporate partnership called Nourish, where we're trying to educate other fellow businesses and companies as to what they can do and then how they can invest in nature markets. So it's probably at the sort of the more smaller, medium scale end that we're looking at.
Will, go for it.
Thanks, Bruce. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. Immediately slightly disappointed I haven't received an invitation to the spa, but I guess that would be very improper. So I won't as a member of His Majesty's government, I won't ask you to do that on stage. So lovely to be here. I mean, what's the role of government at all is generally quite a political question, which of course one has to be a little bit careful about. But I was thinking about this on the way here. I think we see our role in this conversation is very much about, I think, correcting for market failures, right? So I mean, I think historically there's just been this sense, that nature at large and the ecosystem services that it provides are effectively free and infinite. And I think that, we're going through a sort of a global process of awakening and realizing that, at the rate at which nature is being depleted, that is just simply no longer the case. Nature is not infinite. It will run out, and that has consequences for us both as people, but also, as businesses too. So the question is, how can government intervene and help correct that really significant and existential market failure? I think in government, we think about our role, we sort of think about four different things. And then the moment you're speaking publicly and you say, I'm going to talk about four things, you immediately forget at least two of them. So I've written them down so that I don't forget them. So the first one is we think about incentivization. So how can we incentivize businesses to recognize that nature is a depleting service? So we think about some of the work that we're doing on nature positive pathways. We think about corporate sustainability reporting, the TCFD, the TNFD. We've run a call for evidence on the role of the private sector in nature recovery, and we'll issue a response to that shortly. We think about integrity as our second bucket. So we think about supporting businesses. We might talk about this more, about how we can support businesses to understand what they're buying, what they're paying for, what they're investing in when they invest in nature. We're doing some fantastic work with the British Standards Institution, which I hope we can talk about. We think about capacity. We think about capability on the supply side. So the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund is a really good example. NERF, if you don't know it already. Also the LINK program, which came to a close recently, but saw some fantastic results, particularly in this region. And then we also think about the kind of investment, finding the right quality of investment. And in particular, we think about the use of blended finance and the way that public money can be used as sort of, maybe we've got a slightly higher risk tolerance than some of the private investors in this space. How can we use that sort of different approach to risk and different approach to tenor, if you like, to project tenor, to help encourage private investment? Thanks, Bruce.
Great. So you can see we've got organisations represented on the stage, great diversity, but all wanting to play a part, or playing a part, in the helping businesses to secure the environment that they need. Now, before we go further, I said we had some questions for all of you, and therefore, Hannah, if you can, Phoebe, just zap this code, and that on your phone will take you to a simple question that I hope that will stimulate some thought. In that question, there are essentially, you're being asked to put your organization's focus in one of four kind of categories, buckets. One is on this question of managing the environment well, restoring it, getting what we need. We'll leave it to others. It's not for my organization to get directly involved. So, all anonymous, put your in that bucket if that's you. But if you think your main way is perhaps through the traditional approach of donations to environmental causes, then that's perhaps the place for you. Or perhaps you're one of those that's already thinking about securing, paying for outcomes. And then there's a bucket for if you want to do that individually, if you think that's the main focus for your organization, or if you think you can do that with other organizations. So I'll just give you a minute on that. I am going to get the results revealed. I appreciate our panel haven't necessarily got sight of this, but don't worry, I will tell you the results and look for some comment. So I'm going to show the responses on that. And still time to vote. And everybody there, great. Okay, just by way of summary for our panel, because we don't have it on the screen behind us. Interestingly, I think that we'll leave it to others. View is generally not there in this room. I think I can just see one or two votes for we'll leave it to others. There are a few people, clusters of people in the donations arena still, and of course businesses, organizations of all sorts are very important in that donations space, keeping environmental non-profits going. But it seems that actually overwhelmingly we've got a focus on this paying for outcomes, but working with others and not doing it on their own. So, leaving it to others, less favoured, donations, still some interest, but paying for outcomes with others seems to be the focus of those in the room. So, panel, any reaction to that? Phoebe.
Happy to jump in. I think it's brilliant that we recognise that working with others is the way forward. We're never going to tackle the nature and climate crises if we're all working in isolation. And I think reflecting on attitudes in the private sector, and I say the private sector is a big collection of different businesses and sectors. I think we need to do more to show the potential of that approach and really understand that businesses need to overcome their fears about working with others, and so it's great that we recognise it and that we can work on proving that approach to everyone outside of this room who wouldn't select that option.
Okay, really helpful. I'll give one other our panel fingers on the buzzers. Who's going to go first? Hannah, looks like it's you.
Yeah, happy to. I was just going to say that that's a really interesting snapshot and looks like a brilliant direction of travel, and reflects what we're seeing more broadly, that businesses are thinking about this as more than a nice to have and something that's really integral to their strategy, which is brilliant. I think also beyond the question, I think it's really important for businesses to think about beyond paying for positive outcomes and thinking about how they can reduce the negative outcomes as well at the same time. So that's really important for the mitigation hierarchy, to think about things in that order. And also thinking about paying for outcomes, I think we really need to work together to support the organisations who are producing those outcomes, so that the NGOs to be able to really effectively measure those outcomes so that we can make that a really investable asset class potentially. Thanks.
Great. And in terms of businesses working together to secure these outcomes, whether it's to do with flood risk or whatever, love to talk to you about this. There are some great schemes out there that GFI and EKN are aware of, where there is that kind of working together. So, moving us on, Hannah, actually, if I just come back to you first on this. Climate resilience is, of course, a big concern for businesses, both, of course, farm businesses, those businesses that look after land themselves, as well as business more widely. What role, just starting with you, Hannah, does government and insurers, what role do they have to play in ensuring that we've got the landscapes that will reduce the worst excesses of what the weather throws at us these days?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really good question. And perhaps I'll talk about that from an insurer perspective and hand over to Will. But as an insurer and investor, we see the impact of extreme weather every day on our customers, communities and business. So flooding is one of the fastest growing risks in the UK. We've recently done some analysis in our Building Future Communities report, which is available online, that 5.7 million properties and a third of essential infrastructure is at risk from flooding. So for us as an insurer, it's not an add-on, it's really essential to us in maintaining affordable insurance, protecting our assets, particularly as an investor, and reducing claims over the long term. So we really feel like this is something that we need to invest in. Insurers have a couple of levers, some of those being directing capital to NBS and resilient infrastructure, and also partnerships and evidence, so working with stakeholders to build effective data and evidence bases for NBS's role in reducing insurance risk. So a couple of examples are flood action that we've been chairing and very involved with, and the principles for sustainable insurance with UNEP FI, and looking at that as a kind of collective of businesses to think about this issue. Thanks.
Great. So insurance front-footed here. Obviously, there's lots of acronyms I've spotted that are popping up. NBS, nature-based solutions. TNFD is a group. Go for it.
Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, I should have said.
Okay, great. We'll be looking out for those, trying to demystify all the terms that come up here. Will, just to turn to you now in terms of roles for government.
It's a very good question. It has a potentially very long answer, right? So, and I won't give you one, I promise. I mean, I think so. If you have to start, I think, by acknowledging that there is a hugely significant risk here. So Phoebe and her team over at GFI have done some fantastic work about the potential impacts of sort of failing to act on nature-related risks, and these are globally significant impacts. So 3% hit on GDP in the UK alone. I mean, these are really significant numbers. That is jobs, that is livelihoods, that is really significant impact. So, I think the government is really seized of that, and the government is really conscious of that. And there's a huge number of different kinds of things that you can do to start trying to take action to address those risks. The first is really to continue to take global action to try and address the things that are driving these problems, right? So keep going to UNFCCC COPs, keep taking really ambitious steps to try and drive down on the production of greenhouse gases. DESNA's doing fantastic work, really interesting sort of things going on there. When we get towards the sort of, the kind of the adaptation piece, there's just a set of work that DEFRA in particular is doing that I think, creates a lot of really interesting investment opportunities, which of course is one of the things that we've been talking about. So we've got our environmental improvement plan that was sort of refreshed under the current government towards the sort of start of last year. We've got a sort of really ambitious program of goals and targets laid out in there, which is backed by quite a significant sort of spending review settlement. We're looking at 2.7 billion a year in terms of farming and nature recovery from this year. That includes a sort of a record-breaking 10.5 billion out until 2036 to spend on flood defences, which Hannah's mentioned is one of the most obvious risks confronting us from a climate resilience point of view. But that also includes a huge package of work on nature-based solutions. So we're retooling our sort of agricultural subsidies, as you know, into what's called the Environmental Land Management Scheme. That provides funding for things like landscape-based solutions, nature-based solutions, natural flood defences, natural flood schemes. And then we heard a moment ago about the importance of partnerships and working together. So through that environmental land management scheme, we're looking at particular sort of forms of land management, sort of subsidy land management support that encourage partnership working at the landscape scale. So the big example here is the Landscape Recovery Scheme, which is looking at, it's already launching some really extraordinary sort of partnership works at a landscape scale between land managers, farmers, foresters, all sorts of different sorts of engagement with the land in order to try and address exactly the kind of flood risk that Hannah's mentioned, but also all the other kinds of resilient risks that I think we're going to increasingly face as the weather continues to change. Thanks, Bruce.
Great. That's really helpful. Obviously, we've been hearing about roles for insurers such as Aviva. We've been hearing about roles for government there. There is a role for everybody here in tackling these challenges, these nature-related challenges together. So, Mark, to that end, turn to you now. What are landowners doing to serve the businesses, kind of meet their needs, whether it's these businesses seeking to be nature positive, manage their residual carbon emissions, reduce flood risk? From the Swinton estate point of view, just before you start, Mark, just give us a sense of how big your estate is. Have you got some sort of parallel? How many Hyde Parks or Heathrow airports or whatever?
Well, it's 20,000 acres, so it's I'd say it's 20 kilometres east-west by 10 kilometres north-south. So yeah, not quite sure how many Hyde Parks that is, but yeah. I hope that gives you an idea. So, and to be honest, a lot of it is moorland. So a third of that is heather moorland. It's the upland dales. So it's not sort of most productive farmland, and that's possibly why we started to look at nature markets. So nature markets. What we tried to do at Swinton is try and understand on the ground what these all mean. So we've heard some big concepts, and it's wonderful as the funding, but some of these concepts are sort of it starts and it stops, and what we're trying to do is manage land for the long term. So we have to take a sort of long-term approach to what we're going to do and how we get involved. And I suppose on the Swinton estate, you have in land management side of things, you've got everything from a full rewilding where you sort of all farming stops and everything's get taken over by nature. And so examples of that would be Knepp Estate, and you'll have wildlife trusts. But what we're also doing is we're producing food, we're doing various other things, we're trying to look at renewables, we've got woodland, this country currently imports over 50% of its timber. So there's a whole lot of requirements for land and what we need to do on it. So we try and measure those up, just as you as businesses and just as myself as running a leisure business, try and measure up what we need as a business to survive. So we're sort of trying to take those equations on and trying to do it. So part of what we've done at Swinton is how to get involved in these schemes more locally. So, as I say, as a leisure business, we went through all our Scope 1, Scope 2, tried to understand that, tried to understand our carbon footprint, and as you were saying, obviously try and reduce that so you're not having to go out and find some very expensive nature projects, be it a whole chunk of the Amazon or something to offset your carbon. You reduced it in yourself initially, and then you're looking for that minor offset at the end. So that's what we sort of said to do with businesses. We've then worked with local, so we now have a carbon literacy awareness program. So we bring businesses in, we do Climate Action Academy days where we'll do like hands-on work where we'll do Himalayan balsam bashing or hedge laying or tree planting in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'll talk about nature markets, carbon markets, natural flood management, and how business can invest in it. So it's trying to bring it and educate local businesses to what's going on more locally rather than the big concepts that we keep hearing about. So that's what we tried to do on that side. And then on the rural estate, we've done, so up on the moorland, we've done peatland restoration. There's different ways of funding these. So with that, it was Yorkshire Water, so private investment came in to help with that. We've done tree planting, so we worked through the NERF. I think hopefully we've got that concept of what NERF stands for now. And that was just doing, rather than doing, in the past we'd have done big commercial woodlands and we'd have then sent all that timber off to the sawmill. We're saying, well, how can we do forestry more in an environmentally friendly way? So we've done it where people can then buy the woodland carbon credits, and it's a mixture of broadleaf rather than pure conifers. So everything we do, we're just like a business as well. We're trying to understand how we can improve what we're doing. We thought we were doing a wonderful job being an upland estate and supplying sort of over 50% of our food in our hotel comes from our estate, and all our boilers are biomass boilers. We thought we were doing a great job, but we can do better. And it's only by measuring these things. And I suppose one of my things to the panel perhaps is I try and have this discussion with local businesses, and they're understanding their carbon footprint. And carbon's been out there for a while, but other than the very big businesses who are asked to report on it, the other businesses have said, right, net zero by 2050. Right, that's job done, I'll carry on with the business. So they haven't really formulated a plan, they haven't really understood it. And then they're being asked to do nature disclosures. And if we could just get one thing and get the carbon story working, and then there's obviously Carbon Plus and various other things that can come off it. But at the moment, I don't see businesses out there really grasping this. We all know there's a problem, but I don't see it being fed down in a methodical way. So, I don't know, so government funding. So for farmers, we were going into the elms, and then SFI just stopped. So we suddenly thought, well, let's go back to having sheep and everything there because we know we're going to get paid for it. So everything's a bit stop-start, and it just doesn't seem to be kind of flowing in a nice way. There are going to be ups and downs, obviously, but yeah. So I suppose, yeah, I don't know if I've explained what we're doing as a landowner, but I find it a bit tricky, like any business person, and just we are trying to find our way, and we're trying to educate, and all these things they're slow sales. There isn't a nature markets isn't an easy marketplace where you go and do a quick sale and everyone moves on and everyone's happy. It's a complicated story where you've got to get trust and you've got to get buy-in, and that's part of what we're trying to do, I think.
That's really helpful, Mark, taking us quite literally to kind of ground level on this, and also the fact that Swinton it's got businesses itself. It is a business, as well as seeking to serve the needs of other businesses. So, great example there. Will, I know that DEFRA is working with a number of major landowners around England. Can you just tell us a little bit more, beyond Swinton, what others are doing?
Yeah, very, very happy to. And I might pick up, that's a really interesting an important point, which I'll pick up as well. So that's right. So actually DEFRA, the DEFRA group, right, that includes things like the Forestry Commission, Natural England, the Environment Agency. We are one of the largest landowners, and we are working with a new group that's called the National Estate for Nature. So we've brought together, alongside us, some of the other major landowners who collectively own 1/10 of England's land, I understand. So that's the Crown Estate, National Trust, a number of really big private estates. And the idea is that we're going to lead by example through that group. So we're going to set standards, we're going to hold ourselves accountable, we're going to partner with others, smaller businesses or those who are managing certain parts of that land, and start trying to create some sort of shared learning and shared experiences which we can bring out to sort of other landowners throughout the country. We're also, so we keep talking about NERF. So NERF is just to be really clear, so NERF is the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund. So this was set up a few years ago. I was in the Treasury when, but I advised the Chancellor to sign it off. I was very pleased the Chancellor said yes, so that's very good. So this is a £14 million fund. It's supported 130 projects on the sort of on-the-ground supply-side projects to get them investment ready. I think, so it's a huge success, huge thanks to, all sorts of different partners. Lots of examples here. So Mark was one of our first grantees. Kilnsey Park Estate in the Yorkshire Dales, Barker Mill and Cadland Estates work together in the New Forest, landscape scale restoration, Ilford Estate in the south. I mean, there's 130 of these phenomenal examples. They've all learnt something different. They've all learnt something unique. Bruce and his team make all of that learning available. Please, go and look into it. But I think picking up on your really important challenge, the point is that we are sort of we're all trying something really very new, right? We're all confronted with a global crisis. No one's got the actual answer to. If anyone I worked at the UN for 6 years on these issues. There is no one in the world who has the kind of silver bullet. We are trying something collectively as a community in England in particular, really, really innovative, really, really groundbreaking, both domestically and internationally. It is a really steep learning curve. It is really, really hard. Partnership work is really important. Communicating learning, events like this where we can all share sort of experiences and those kind of things, it's are really key. But it does, I think, inevitably generate that sense that there's a bit here and there's a bit there, and how do we join it up? And then that starts and that stops, and it's a tough learning curve. But I mean, I sort of take some comfort from the fact that even 5 years ago, this event wouldn't have been possible. But only a month ago, we had the fantastic Aviva Day at the UK hosted ITBES 12, which was about the reliance of business on biodiversity. 145 governments agreed that statement, which was, that huge report on business dependencies on nature, fantastic. 300 or so businesses at the Aviva Day. There's momentum here. With that comes some turbulence, but I take a lot of sort of comfort in the momentum.
Great, thanks. There's momentum here, but it is complex and rapidly evolving, and therefore we might think, well, kind of where's the support? So Phoebe, I wonder if I could just turn to you now and ask what's already in place to help businesses find opportunity, find a relationship with those who look after day-to-day land and water in the north of England.
Yeah, brilliant. This is a really important question, and it depends entirely on kind of what sector, what type of business is asking that question and why they're asking it, because I think there are so many routes to this arena that are based on specific business interests. But if I could offer some overall thoughts, if you're a kind of a business or an organization that's just looking to figure out your strategic relationship with nature, I would recommend starting with the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. And I'm actually going to run a quick poll. By show of hands, who is aware of the TNFD? Okay, brilliant. So most people in this room know about the TNFD. They know it's an overarching framework. I saw a couple of not raised hands. Basically, walking businesses through their dependencies and their impact. So what Mark said about kind of, we thought we were doing a great job, or we thought we didn't have that much. Maybe a business will say, I don't really interact with the natural environment, so it's not for me to worry about. Every business needs to understand their relationship with the natural environment to challenge that. And through the TNFD, the UK, the GFI hosts the UK National Consultation Group. That's 600 businesses experimenting with the framework, learning about what its potential is to embed within their business operations. I would say that that's a good starting point for any business. But if you're a business worried about your risks, which is increasingly happening, I would say that there's always the possibility of working with others. That's why I was thrilled about the poll. At the GFI, we are exploring collective action models. And if I were a business operating in a specific part of the UK, my first move would be to look within my own neighbourhood, look within the local nature partnerships, go to the local authorities, go to the local chambers of commerce, because through our work on risk and resilience, we have found that pretty much every area of the country, someone is asking this question of what are the risks of nature and climate degradation to business. We're coming out with a report on East Anglia, which is a very tough region, going to face a lot of physical nature and climate risks over the next 20 years. And there's so much activity with businesses across different sectors asking that question and working out how to act. And then finally, you might be looking at it from an impact perspective. And so businesses that are thinking about their decarbonisation journey, they know they want nature-based carbon, they know they want it from the UK, but they think, as Mark pointed out, they think, oh, we've set our target by 2050, we'll think about it in 2050. That's not how it works. And Mark said it really well. We need to start developing those long-term relationships and those conversations now. And the NERF, along with programs like the Link and all the other work that's going on in this space, there's tons that businesses can get involved in if they speak to the projects directly and understand how can they build those valuable relationships from the ground up.
Phoebe, that's really helpful. There's lots of support out there. Kind of top tip, given where we are in England, Nature North is a fantastic initiative across the whole swathe of the north of England with various programs bringing together many of the non-profit suppliers and the National Farmers Union and others to provide this offering to business. So thanks. Hannah, just anything else? I mean, obviously you insure a lot of businesses. Have you got any comments on the sort of support that's available to kind of help them find their kind of needs met, perhaps on flood risk in particular?
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's quite tricky at the moment, and bringing it back to Mark's point around how do we create this market where private sector wants to invest in nature-based solutions or land management strategies. And I think it's something that we've all been grappling with in terms of trying to create the evidence base for outcomes again. And I'll again mention the Flood Action Coalition and similar groups that are looking at how we can quantify those outcomes and therefore monetize them and therefore create a market. Because at the moment, there's a bit of a struggle with the voluntary biodiversity credit market. So how do we, incentivize companies to purchase credits off their own back? But then that's more like philanthropy. But instead, it'd be brilliant to create this dynamic market and demand, which I think the government is really trying to do by putting in really high integrity standards to help show that there's a really credible reason to invest in credits. But also, we need this stable policy environment to help businesses know that they can invest, that there's longevity in those solutions. It's a lot of different solutions needed.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, before we get to the point where you can all raise questions, comments for our panel, we're just going to touch, we've recognised, I hope, the diversity of businesses, both in just their size and character, but also in terms of the relationship that they can have, or they already have, with the natural environment. But just in two bundles, we'll just take smaller businesses. So let's take SMEs. For many, as I think you acknowledged, Mark, this may just feel too much to be thinking about. But Will and Mark, what can smaller businesses do with their limited resources to secure what they need from the natural environment? Of course, they're vulnerable. A rail line gets shut, or whatever it might be. What can they do?
I'll go first. So, yes, because as I say, that's where we've tried to work out with Nourish, is to try and understand, and it's, yes, there is instant action. They can go and buy a carbon credit, they can do something like that, but for them, that they're also trying to keep the business going, so that it needs to be something that the whole business is bought into, that they can understand is going to be there. So it's the educational bit first, I think. So they need to go away, understand what that business is doing to start with. There's businesses like, I say, investors in environment. There's a whole host of things that we can go and they'll give you that information. They'll start saying, this is what you are doing as a business. Then you can work out what, you get the employee buy-in, you get everyone working on it, and they understand, yes, this is good for our business. This is probably actually saving us money, some of these actions are going to do, and that's what we're doing. And then they start to see their route map to net zero, because at the moment it's just a concept. It's not really, it's obviously not being, there's no statutory requirement to do it. The government aren't planning to do anything like that. So it's purely a voluntary thing. So they start to understand that route map. Then they see what the left over, and then they go and say, well, how can I find products or nature markets or something I can invest in to do that? And that will get them out there. They may well actually find that the nature they want to invest in, it doesn't actually give them much carbon credits. It might be a natural flood management thing that we're doing that actually isn't actually going to create much carbon. But it's got them into that sphere, and it's got them thinking. And I think just get involved. So I find, I mean, we got ARC, we've explained ARC, Air Resilience Corporation. Air Resilience, what's the C bit?
Companies.
So they're the Leeds-based one. So they're doing a great job in trying to find businesses in Leeds to then invest upland work, be it tree planting, hedgerow work, things like that. And that stuff, again, we've got to explain this to the landowners, the farmers who've got to make the decision to do this. So they're used to the government giving them money for action. So the SFI is great. It's saying you're not here just to produce food, you're here also to look after the land and produce environmental, but it's all paid through action. So they understand that. So if the businesses are then investing in that, and it's lovely to have these great high-end products that have gone through the Woodland Carbon Code, gone through lots of things, and then businesses are happy. But the farmers have got to put a lot of investment and effort into getting to that stage. So I feel the catchment investment is a good idea. It gets you talking. You can see what you're doing. You can pay some money towards some actions fairly early on, and that gets you going. And then you can look at other products beyond that. Maybe, I don't know, is that a good start for small business?
Really helpful, Mark. So there are things for smaller end of business. Will, anything you want to add on this smaller end of
So, so that's fantastic insight. I mean, so I spent some time outside of government, God forbid, working for a small company, and time is precious, right? Time is quite literally money if you're running a small business. And one of the things that I think can be difficult is sort of you don't want to be exposed to a greenwashing risk, right? I mean, that's pretty clear. And so, how do you know what you're investing in is going to deliver what it says it does? How do you know that you're not taking too much of a risk there? The government's been working with the British Standards Institution to develop some nature market standards. We launched one last year. We'll launch a couple more in the next couple of weeks. The idea is that creates a really clear sort of, it's literally like a label, right? It's literally going to be a label that gets attached to nature-based projects, so that if you're a small business, you don't need to spend a lot of time doing due diligence. You don't need to spend a lot of time verifying that this thing is going to do what it says. There's a standard right there. You can go to market. You can buy something that you know is going to be a high-integrity nature investment. Save yourself a bunch of time. Make the whole transaction a lot easier. Thanks, Bruce.
Super. Let's just turn finally now to the larger end of business. I'm going to challenge Phoebe and Hannah here. In terms of this sort of new relationship with the management of land and water, aren't we really here just talking about opportunities for the larger built infrastructure businesses, those who operate our transport system, for example? Or are we really just talking of the water utilities, which have an obvious dependence on land and water? Can it go beyond? Phoebe.
Yes, it can and it must. So very short answer, but if I can elaborate, I can see why the business case is more evident to just leave it to water companies and big transport, big infrastructure to care about these things. But if I were a business owner, I would ask myself, are these companies able to address these risks? And if they don't, and opportunities, but if they don't, what does that mean for me? So if I'm operating in a region, and we're already seeing this, so there are parts of East Suffolk, for example, where the local water company is refusing new water licenses to businesses like paint manufacturers and microbreweries, because there is not enough water in the catchment. So essentially, smaller businesses do have a vested interest, and they should also be acting on opportunities to support their local environment, because small businesses make up so much of GDP. It's not just about large corporations and what they want. So I would say, to my original response, it should. be progressing that way. And we're really looking forward to working collectively to make that happen. And I think the next 5 years in particular are going to be very interesting in that conjunction between how bigger and smaller businesses work together to be more effective en masse.
Great, thanks. Hannah, Aviva's very interested in place. Just tell us a bit more, is this going to go beyond the water utilities and network rail, etc.?
Thanks, and I'll just give a quick answer. I think this is a really important point, and initially it can appear relevant just for those sectors that are directly dependent on land, but in reality every business operates on land, has a workforce that lives and travels, supply chains, customers, etc. So it really is a mainstream business risk. And just to echo your point around the TNFD, I think if you use some of the tools that they suggest, you can really start to surface some of those risks and opportunities to your business through analysing the material impacts, using the data available. We really do have a place-based approach, and our support for nature-based solutions is about strengthening resilience across the regions we operate, both for our clients and customers.
Great, thank you. And I think a lot of businesses would be saying kind of now's the time to act. Obviously, there's a lot of concern about the price of carbon and how that's going to spiral. But also, a lot of these projects that will deliver services to business take time to come on stream. If you're going to plant woodland, for example, obviously that takes time before it sort of has optimal performance in terms of flood risk reduction. Now, let's turn. We're going to turn to questions from you, but there is one more of those polls for you. And this, again, is a question. So turn to the same Mentimeter that we had before. And you should see another question there, 4 buckets, or 5, actually, in terms of something else. What outcomes do you think are a priority for your organisation? Is it improving biodiversity? Is it securing water supply, like Phoebe just mentioned? Reducing flood risk? Removing atmospheric carbon dioxide, that management of residual emissions, or is it something else? I think it's done as a sort of ranking. Okay, right. I wonder where that is. Is that? Let's, if this isn't going to play ball. Okay, go for it. Quick while it sticks. And I'm going to show some responses now, which should show on your devices, and just a little snapshot of interests in the room, if I can get onto it. It seems like, well, water supply, biodiversity, they're all high, basically. We've got a spread of interests in this room. Come and tell us afterwards what your something else was or is. But we'd love to hear, we've got about a quarter of an hour remaining, love to hear from all of you here so we can get this discussion going. And it's going to be for our panel, we're going to aim for just 2 from our panel to be responding to each question. So panel, fingers on the buzzers, who's going to be quickest? And I can see a hand up right at the front here, gentlemen, second row in. Microphone is coming to you. Just say organisation name, and then let's get straight to your point. Speak away.
Rupert Bull, the Disruption House. My question is probably aimed at Hannah initially and possibly needs a bit of government response. So if we look at carbon, the ECB, I just saw a report this morning, is now concerned that a number of banks in the euro area are not actually incorporating climate risk into the risk management frameworks, and they're threatening them with having to hold additional capital if they haven't actually got the risk models up to date. Hannah started to talk about sizing, if you like, what's at risk, because obviously insurers insure risk, and clearly I think we spend a lot of time working in and around the SME voluntary space, or volunteering to do nothing space is probably the reality. And one of the ways you can get business owners to focus is you price risk. So actually, it's all very well to have a standard for investing in something, but you're investing for a return. I mean, that's what Mark was saying. So unless you know how much you might lose due to flooding or whatever it happens to be, I mean, you'll have your geolocation data points. So have you got those models? Because if you haven't got those models, you can't even begin to price it. So where are you on that journey? And then where is government on the basis of actually saying, if you don't actually, you'll have to hold more capital, a bit like some of the other regimes. So I guess that way it's almost like you'll get SMEs to respond because their insurance will be more expensive or loans will be more expensive. So it's a long question, but I suppose it starts with data.
Hannah, the buzzer's been pressed for you. Go for it.
Sure, and thanks. That's a really important question. And from my work in banks as well, I know that a lot of them are working on how to quantify that risk through very complex scenario analysis and models that can look into the future and see, okay, if we carry on like this, we will be losing X amount of money. In terms of what we're doing at Aviva, it's, again, very complex. There's very variables, levels of data across the board. But Flood Action, for example, is looking to try and quantify that. So I think one of their stats is that if we spend X amount of money, we'll save 6 times that amount. But they're really looking to provide the evidence base behind those initial estimates. I know that, thinking of banks again, I think Deutsche Bank are running a program on looking at how to quantify water risk and how to measure that in terms of pricing as well. So maybe that's one to watch.
Will?
Yeah, very quickly. So it sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's not. I mean, it's what you expect from the government official, isn't it? I mean, we follow that conversation very, very carefully, right? I mean, so that sounds like, well, government says nothing. It's not that at all. There's a lot of people following exactly those issues, this intersection of insurance, reinsurance. There's an organisation in government called Flood Re, which is a flood reinsurance organisation. This is something that we are, very, very keenly monitoring and very, very closely aware of.
Great questions. I know, the lady to your right. Great. Say where you're from and get straight to your point, please.
Hi, I'm Emily Diamond from Nature North, and thank you for the plug earlier.
You're going to be here. That's great.
So it was really interesting to hear everything you were saying, and I was just wanted to really ask around the new English Evolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which is going to devolve powers around environment and climate to the new strategic authorities, and also the rollout of local nature recovery strategies. So it felt like to me there was a slight gap in the conversation. How do you see the role of the authorities who have their own priorities? They've developed the strategies with huge numbers of stakeholders, and they're increasingly interested in nature finance and how they can get involved and support businesses to move into this space. So what does the panel possibly Will, I guess maybe you'd be the obvious person to start. How do you see the role of those authorities moving forward, especially as at the moment those powers are quite ill-defined? So where do you see their space in all this?
Great, thank you. So I guess we're talking about combined authorities here and the metro mayors, etc. That's really a kind of new dimension to government. What's its role? Phoebe, first. The buzzer's been pressed for you by Will.
Yeah, I'm really barging in here. So great to see you, Emily. I think it's a really valuable question. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is that the whole point of devolution is that every combined authority or mayoral authority can set their own role, and it makes me think of the LINK programme, so local investment in natural capital. There's 5 local authorities or combined authorities that have been exploring exactly, as you say, the role of nature finance, what role they should be playing. They've made some amazing, they've got some amazing findings, amazing projects on the go, but they all look very different. And so I think that we need to allow for that flexibility, depending on both the ecological, the economic makeup of every single combined authority, but make sure that we all keep talking to each other. And Bruce and I had a conversation with Link just the other day about continuing the work beyond the official programme end in March, and how more local authorities and more combined authorities can jump on this community of practice and learn from each other. So that would be my response and my recommendation, to talk to Link, basically.
Will?
I mean, I think that's a great answer. So, I think I think that there's a hugely important role for everybody at every sort of rung of this, sort of increasingly devolved system. Those roles are changing and evolving. That's a sort of a function of the politics that we're in. But I think that in the end, what this comes down to is, typically quite local decisions made in, very, very sort of specific catchment areas by people who really do know and understand their land. And so I think we just need to make sure that whatever the politics around the wiring, we just have those partnership conversations ready to go.
Mark.
Sorry. Yeah. So for me, the partnership's working. I mean, you've got your projects. I mean, Nature North's great. You're bringing projects together. We've got environmental farmers groups. There's a lot of sort of land managers coming together on this thing. The bit where we're struggling, so we've done woodland planting. We've done a biodiversity site. They've been there, ready, investable, and we've tried selling through different partners, and we've only ever sold 10% of sort of what we've got there. So what they really need to do is bring the business side together. That's the bit that's, for me, is missing at the moment. And as we've just talked about, how do the businesses sort of get together as a group, that there isn't an obvious get-together for businesses, that would be an area I'd like to see them, and whether the government needs to do a bit more to... I mean, the government did really well with sort of kickstarting renewables. You had RHI schemes and feed-in tariffs and all that, and then they moved away, and the market was there, and it took over. At the moment, I don't see the government coming up with a very clear kickstart to nature markets, then we'll move away, and the private companies come easily into it. There just doesn't seem to be that simple solution out there. The mayors can come up with it. Brilliant. Good on them.
Great. Yeah, so various mayors. Mayor right here, Tracy Brabin, I think, is very much on it, understands this arena. Andy Burnham, too, Greater Manchester, has really been a pioneer in this nature finance arena, as it's known. Also, just look out for initiatives like the North East Carbon Marketplace coming out of this LINK program that Phoebe's just mentioned. That's really obviously designed to serve businesses to find their carbon credits locally, not perhaps on the other side of the world. We've got time for maybe a couple more questions. Gentlemen, over on the far side there, and then we'll come forward, and then we're probably going to be at time. So, where are you from, sir? And your question, please.
Colin Curtis from TBL. I think fundamentally the aim is really simple, which is that businesses need to look after nature. There's an awful lot of acronyms between TNFD and BVCM and a few other ones I've learned today. How do we stop that confusing people and getting in the way of progress?
Great question. Right. Fingers on the buzzers. This is such an important thing, getting the language so it's all accessible. Mark, you're ready.
Okay, well, I'll give it a go. I mean, yeah, so that was a field you're paying. I mean, say we're a business and we try to understand it, and we had help. So there's companies out there that will help businesses understand, and that's why I feel the carbon bit was the bit that we've been talking about for quite a while, and all these things, you get reactions that's good or it's bad, and obviously carbon doesn't explain all nature issues out there, but it's a starting point. And so I personally, I've decided that trying to explain to a business how they understand their carbon footprint, how they can reduce it, is something they can quantify, they can get ahead of, and that's how they start to invest in nature markets. So that's where, through Nourish Partnership, that's what we've brought companies on board to try and do. We do carbon literacy training and awareness, and then we show them nature markets and how they can buy into that. So for me, I agree with you. I get a little bit nervous. Clearly, we need to understand that nature's the bigger thing. We've got to understand how we do that. But it's, yes, how can you start with one product and move people through it a bit? Yeah.
Great to know that this hands-on is not just by finding the right brochure that's got the plain English, but actually going to places like Swinton and seeing how it's delivered on the ground. Will, just...
Well, I know you're trying to move us on, but I mean, we should plug your brochure, right? I mean, so so Bruce has a brochure. So go downstairs to the exhibition room. There's the brochure, in fact. So good, go and get one of those.
I hope this helps. It's been written to be as accessible as possible to businesses large and small. Environmental improvement, what's changing for business, sums up some of the discussion in this panel and gives some practical examples of businesses that have chosen to form a sort of positive, proactive relationship with environmental projects in their vicinity. So thanks, Will. Time is nearly upon us. The lady who's wearing green and black, go for it. Where are you from?
Oh, I'm Camilla Sherwin, and I work on the Investors in the Environment programme, which is actually where it sort of Swinton started looking at their impacts and how they could manage it and reduce them. And my point slightly crosses over with yours, is that we try and just make it really simple and get organisations of any size to understand what their environmental impacts are and how they can act to reduce them. And actually working, if you talk to people about carbon in a business, they often don't really understand what that is, but actually talking about nature makes it really real. And there's loads of things that small businesses can do. They can go out on volunteering days, but that involves kind of organising everybody to get out of the office and things like that. But actually, even just bringing nature sort of into the office, or having plants outside the office, or just getting people to appreciate the nature that's around them, doing lunchtime walks, things like that, are just as really valuable in terms of trying to crack this environmental crisis we have on our hands. So it wasn't really a question. I think it sort of got answered in the last one, but I just wanted to make the point. And there is, Mark, you might be interested, some biodiversity literacy training you can now deliver, which has been developed by Edinburgh University.
Brilliant. Thanks. This is all about sharing these initiatives going on. Thanks so much, Camilla. It's time to wrap. Do check out either the electronic, or there are some paper copies of this guide. If it helps, look on the stand hosted by the Ecosystems Knowledge Network downstairs, where we can talk about this further. But without further ado, I'd like to thank Will Lockhart from DEFRA, Mark Cunliffe-Lister from Swinton Estate, Hannah Eskill from Aviva, Phoebe Tucker from the Green Finance Institute, for helping us get into this very exciting arena, which has such a positive dimension to it, as well as dealing with these fears, these concerns, these risks which businesses are now facing. So thank you very much for all your contributions. We'll close now. Look forward to talking more.